I knew something was off the second my phone buzzed with the announcement. Subject line: $10M win secured. My hands were still half frozen from walking in with a hot coffee and that pathetic hope you carry right before a big win. You know, the one where you think maybe, just maybe, this time they'll see you. But as I read the internal memo, my breath caught. The name on the headline wasn't mine. It was Vanessa. Vanessa, the VP's pet project with 3 months of experience and a LinkedIn profile that read like a TED Talk crash course. They'd wiped me clean. No mention of the woman who spent 6 months building that deal from scratch. 6 months of late-night calls with procurement, rewriting the proposal language until my eyes bled, flying out on my own dime to sit with their operations lead during a crisis just to make sure the trust stuck. Hell, I'd even skip Thanksgiving with my family to get the final pitch deck perfect. But according to the company, the key negotiator was someone who once asked if an NDA needed a password to open. That memo felt like a sucker punch from someone smiling. A clean erasure, surgical, quiet, and final. I called my manager, thinking maybe this was a mistake, some glitch in the comms chain. He picked up on the second ring, chipper as ever, like we weren't standing on the bones of my dignity. "Hey," I said, trying to sound steady. "Did you see the announcement?" A pause. Then too casual. "Yeah, saw it. Look, we all know you were the engine behind this. You'll get credit, in spirit. Credit. In spirit. Like I was a ghost haunting my own damn victory. And hey, while you're here, if this kind of story has you hooked, do me a favor. Tap that like button, and if you're one of the 97% who listens but doesn't hit subscribe, now's the time. It really keeps this whole ship running." Back to the silence on the line. I didn't scream. Didn't cry. I just nodded even though he couldn't see it. "Got it," I said, then hung up. Calm. Clinical. The kind of quiet that comes right before a Category 5 hurricane makes landfall. I walked straight to my desk and started backing up everything. Not files, I didn't need the files. I needed one thing, the email thread. The one from 4 months ago, where I pitched the exact line the client's director had repeated back to me on our third call. "We don't want just a vendor. We want a vision." That phrase had sealed the mood of the entire deal. It had been my North Star, my gut check sentence when the revision started spiraling. I found the email. Subject line: Re-initial approach deck. Inside was my framework. My language. My voice. I forwarded it to my personal account with a subject line that just said, "If they erase you, remember this." Then I closed my laptop. I didn't rage. I didn't post anything cryptic on Slack or throw a fit in the break room. No dramatics. Just a slow sip of lukewarm coffee while I stared at the screen, realizing I had officially become the invisible backbone of someone else's headline. They thought they'd buried me under polished PR and a fresh coat of nepotism, but they forgot something. You bury seeds too. HR called me the next morning with fake cheer in her voice, like she just baked cookies instead of watching a screw job unfold in real time. "We'd love to take you to lunch this week. A little thank you send-off, maybe Wednesday?" I stared at the blinking cursor in my inbox before typing back. "I won't be attending. But thank you." No need for a scene. No need for forced smiles or lukewarm Cobb salads with the same people who watched me get erased and said nothing. Let Vanessa enjoy the shrimp cocktail on the corporate card. She'd earned it, apparently, by existing in the right room at the right time with the right last name. I came in early on Tuesday, packed up my desk before the office even smelled like burnt coffee. Nobody noticed. One junior analyst asked, "Vacation?" I smiled and nodded. Let them think what they want. It was easier for everyone. No one asked for an exit interview. No card, no signatures, not even a lukewarm goodbye from my manager. Just a quiet walk past frosted glass conference rooms where the future was being shaped by people who had no idea what the bones looked like underneath. But here's what they didn't realize. The contract wasn't closed. Sure, it had been celebrated, but it was still pending final approval. The deal hadn't been inked. Buried in the fourth appendix was Clause 12C, language I'd fought to include because I'd seen too many deals go sideways at the 11th hour. It required joint sign-off on one final framework condition, a vendor-authored commitment language that matched the original proposal tone. It had to sound like the pitch that sold them. And the pitch that sold them? That was mine. Vanessa didn't even know the clause existed. Legal had skimmed it. Procurement had flagged it once during a late-night call 6 weeks back. and I'd walk them through the intent. That call? Recorded. Time-stamped. Logged. I'd fought for that language like it was oxygen because I knew the value of a paper trail in a company that loved amnesia. So I called Marcus. Marcus was a third-party compliance auditor we'd worked with briefly during a different client firestorm last year. He was sharp, methodical, and allergic to corporate bullshit. After one particularly messy negotiation, he told me over a shared whiskey at a hotel bar in Dallas, "If it ever gets ugly, I'll back you. Just say the word." I said the word. He answered on the second ring. "You good?" "No. But I'm clear. And I need to confirm something." I walked him through the clause, the email, the structure of the pending sign-off. He didn't interrupt. When I finished, there was a pause, then his voice dropped into that low, deliberate register he used when things got interesting. "They left you off the chain of custody?" "Entirely. Idiots." He promised to review the existing compliance trail and get back to me. I trusted him. Because Marcus didn't care about politics, he cared about process. And he'd seen how thin the ice under these deals could be. By sunset I was gone. Batch turned in. Slack logged out. Inbox auto-replied into the void. But I didn't feel hollow. I felt clean. They thought I'd slink away, disappear into the noise. Maybe even crawl back later, tail between my legs, asking for scraps or freelance crumbs from Vanessa's glittering table. But they didn't realize I hadn't left the house. I'd taken the blueprint. By the end of that week, Vanessa's face was everywhere. Slicked-up headshots on LinkedIn banners, a 10-second promo video with that breathy Women in Leadership piano music, and a blog post titled, "How One Rising Star Brokered a $10 million Breakthrough." I couldn't scroll without seeing her reheated buzzwords served back like they were gospel. Synergistic alignment, deep listening, visionary velocity. I'd written the real pitch while nursing a migraine and a cold turkey sandwich at midnight. She'd rebranded it like it was born from divine revelation over a mimosa. Internal PR called her the architect. The kind of title that makes people forget there's a whole damn construction crew under the foundation. Apparently, having 2 strategy meetings and a brand new pantsuit was enough to make you a visionary now. She even gave an interview to a podcast I used to respect, talked about how building authentic client trust starts with emotional resonance. Which was rich, considering the most emotionally resonant thing she'd ever done was cry in the break room when her oat milk went missing. Meanwhile, I was freelancing. Quietly. No blog posts. No backpats. Just work. It didn't take long before one of the client's senior PMs reached out. Not officially, not through company channels. Just a DM on my personal LinkedIn. "Hey, mind hopping on a call about some of the framework language?" Feels off. 10 minutes into the Zoom, it was clear they weren't just confused. They were annoyed. "This isn't how we scoped it," the PM said, clicking through the revised project outline. The original intent felt more grounded. "This version reads like a sales deck." I didn't say, "That's because it is." I just nodded and asked careful questions. Strategy, not sabotage. If they wanted clarity, I'd give it. Off the record, of course. By the third call, the client's operations lead, the same one I'd helped through that logistics fiasco in Q1, leaned in, squinting slightly at the screen. "Why weren't you at the final sign-off?" My jaw tensed, but I kept my voice flat. There were some shifts on the team. Leadership wanted new visibility. She didn't say anything. Just pressed her lips together in that tight, knowing way you only learn after 2 decades of being talked over by people who think PowerPoint equals competence. "I'll be honest," she said finally. "The new lead doesn't seem to understand the contract's spine. Half the language doesn't match the tone that sold us." There it was. The spine. The voice. The soul of the pitch. The thing I'd poured into the bones of that deal for 6 relentless months. And now it was unraveling thread by thread in real time. But I didn't gloat. Didn't jab. I just helped. Patiently. Precisely. Like a surgeon sewing up wounds caused by someone else's ego. Because here's the thing no one at my old company realized. They could dress her up all they wanted, but the client hadn't bought a face, they'd bought a framework. And that framework was mine. So I stayed quiet. Unseen. But in the right ears I was still very much heard. It started with a single flagged line from procurement. Just a harmless little comment in the margin of a shared doc. "This doesn't match previous language." Was this revised? From the outside, it probably looked like a routine compliance check. But I knew the signs. That wasn't a question, it was a warning shot. The kind procurement sends before calling their own lawyers. The kind that says, "We don't trust you anymore." They'd been reviewing the final contract package, trying to wrap up the last signatures, when the inconsistencies started piling up. The tone was off. The clause structure had changed. And more importantly, the statement of work didn't match the original alignment doc they'd fallen in love with. The one I'd crafted word for word with their ops lead to make sure it spoke their language, not just in legalese but in intent. Now it read like something pulled from a sales playbook. Cold. Over-rehearsed. Defensive. What they didn't realize, what Vanessa and the legal team had failed to grasp, is that you can't Frankenstein a deal by cutting out the person who shaped its skeleton. Remove the architect and the house shifts. They tried to patch it up with bullet points and fluff, but the foundation was off. I'd watched enough client relationships implode over small contractual misalignments to know how fragile trust could be when legalese starts to contradict lived memory. The call came on a Thursday afternoon. Marcus looped me in unofficially, of course. "They're asking questions," he said without preamble. "Big ones. About authorial intent, phrasing differences, metadata timestamps." "Which clause?" I asked even though I already knew. 12C. The vendor-authored language. Apparently the final doc swaps in corporate phrasing that doesn't match what they approved. I let out a breath. Not a sigh. More like the exhale you make when your opponent finally moves the pawn you've been baiting for 10 turns. Do they have the original email chain? Not yet. But they're moving fast. Their GC has requested full version history on the SOW. They're trying to protect themselves in case this falls apart. That was it. The trigger. They were scared. Not just annoyed or confused, scared. Because a $10 million contract hinging on misaligned clauses can spiral into breach territory. And no one wants to be the side holding the Sharpie when the signature goes sideways. By Friday, I heard whispers through the grapevine. The deal was stalled. Internally, they were calling it a pause for alignment. But I knew better. You don't pause a deal that big unless you're ready to rethink it entirely. And then came the subpoena. The client's legal team issued a formal request to our former company for all internal drafts, communications, and revisions related to the original statement of work and framework language, including very specifically any authored content from former employees involved in the proposal phase. They wanted the drafts. They wanted the voice. They wanted me. It was happening. Quietly, surgically, but it was happening. The very thing I'd been erased from was now unraveling because my voice had been removed from the document they'd trusted. I wasn't just a ghost anymore, I was becoming Exhibit A. And if they were about to open that email chain, they were going to find out exactly who built the bones. I was brewing coffee in my kitchen, barefoot, in a hoodie, trying to remember what it felt like to breathe without corporate deadlines sitting on my chest, when the email came through. Subject line: Request for verification strategic proposal language. The sender was a name I recognized, in-house counsel from the client's side. A sharp woman named Talia who'd been looped into the early proposal meetings. She hadn't spoken much, but when she did, everyone shut up. Her email was short, surgical. "We've reviewed internal documentation and uncovered a framework draft attributed to your email address from 4 months ago. One line in particular appears foundational to the deal's strategic tone. Before proceeding, can you confirm? Did you author the following sentence?" Below it, in clean black font, was the sentence I'd written one night at 2:13 a.m., half drunk on caffeine and frustration, after 6 failed iterations of the deck. "We're not here to sell you a solution, we're here to build one beside you." That was the line. The pulse. The moment the client leaned in and said, "That's it. That's the tone." I stared at it, then at the timestamp. Exactly as I remembered. I replied, "Yes, I did." An hour later my phone rang. It was Talia. "Thank you for confirming," she said, voice even but brisk. "We believe your authorship may be pivotal in clarifying contractual intent. Would you be willing to appear in a discovery hearing, should this escalate?" I didn't hesitate. Yes. No drama. No vengeance in my tone. Just yes. Calm, steady, deliberate, like stepping into a suit you forgot you owned and finding it still fits. They didn't know yet. My old company had no clue I was back in orbit. Vanessa was still out there posting about leadership journeys and ethical influence. The VP was probably teeing up her next promotion cycle. Nobody had connected the dots. Not yet, but the fuse was burning, and the next room was full of gas. Talia ended the call by saying, "You'll be contacted by our outside counsel for deposition prep. We appreciate your cooperation." And, for what it's worth, I remember that call. That line mattered. When the call ended, I just stood there in my kitchen, coffee going cold. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. Just closed my eyes for a second and let the moment settle. All I'd done was tell the truth. And now the truth had claws. By Monday, the weather inside my former company turned from smug sunshine to a full-blown corporate hailstorm. It started as murmurs in legal's Slack channel, confused threads about language discrepancies, metadata conflicts, and external counsel, raising concerns about narrative continuity. Then it escalated. Fast. Calls flew between compliance and sales. The VP scheduled a 7:30 a.m. alignment sync, which is executive code for who the hell screwed this up, and how do we blame someone else before lunch. The phrase that lit the fuse was deceptively simple: authorial origin. Talia had used it during a follow-up email to my former employer's legal team, specifically in reference to the Statement of Work framework. She cited client-side confusion and inconsistencies in strategic tone that may warrant reevaluation of signatory authority. Translation: you might have lied about who built this thing and now it's a problem. Inside the company, no one knew where the wording had come from. The current team hadn't written it. Vanessa sure as hell hadn't. Legal tried pinning it on a junior copywriter. Procurement tossed it back to strategy. Everyone kept pointing at each other like drunk toddlers in a broken vase lineup. Meanwhile, I was sitting in a conference room across town, across the table from the client's litigation counsel and a court reporter. They were preparing for the possibility of formal discovery. No suits, no drama, just calm, thorough questions. I answered everyone without flinching. Yes, I wrote the line. Yes, I authored the original framework. Yes, I was excluded from the final stages of negotiation. No, I was never credited publicly. Yes, I still had the emails. Then came the kicker. Did you modify or scrub any metadata from your submitted documents? The junior attorney asked. I almost laughed. No. In fact, I don't think anyone ever did. She nodded. We noticed. Turns out, they pulled the full version history from the Google Drive draft my old team had duplicated into their shared folder. And nestled right there in the Properties tab of the earliest draft, like a signature in wet cement, was my name. Full. Unmistakable. Time-stamped. Tracked. Unedited. They'd taken my words, stripped the voice, dressed them in corporate drag, and never thought to check the DNA. Back inside the company, I heard through Marcus that panic had set in. The VP held an emergency truth and reconciliation meeting with legal and communications. Vanessa was grilled for 2 hours, defending herself with slippery non-statements like, I was deeply involved in the strategy, and we iterated as a team, and the always reliable, well, I don't remember exactly who wrote it, but we all contributed. But the metadata didn't lie. The sentence that sold the client? It wasn't hers. And now the client knew it. You could feel it, something shifting. The press releases had gone quiet. The LinkedIn praise parade screeched to a halt. Internal comms stopped using architect. They were stalling, backpedaling, rewriting history in real time. But history already had a timestamp, and it had my name on it. Courtrooms are colder than you think. Not temperature-wise, emotionally. Like a museum no one's allowed to touch. Every whisper sounds like a thunderclap. Every glance feels rehearsed. And that morning, as I sat in the second row behind the client's table, watching the executives from my former company stiffen like mannequins in their off-the-rack suits, the silence had teeth. The judge was already annoyed. He'd been flipping through a stack of printed exhibits and flagged one paragraph twice now. A clause in the Statement of Work, one I knew by heart. This language, he said, squinting without looking up. It's unusually specific, almost personal in tone. I saw Vanessa tense across the aisle, her mouth twitching like she wanted to say something but couldn't find the right buzzword to save her this time. The VP sat beside her. Jaw set so tight it looked like he'd cracked a molar. The client's lead attorney stood. Calm. Measured. The kind of presence that doesn't rush, because they know the room will follow their pace. If it pleases the court, she began, lifting a single-page exhibit, we'd like to read a paragraph from Appendix B of the signed draft, which the plaintiff contends reflects the original intent of the engagement. She cleared her throat and read aloud, "We're not here to sell you a solution, we're here to build one beside you. That's not just our pitch, it's our posture. Your team isn't a target market. It's our partner." The room didn't breathe. The judge lowered his glasses. "That language doesn't sound like it came from a corporate committee. Who wrote this?" A long pause. Then the attorney turned slightly, not even theatrical, just deliberate. She gestured toward me. "We'd like to call the original author to clarify intent." That sentence didn't echo. It landed. The room turned. Slowly. Like a ship pivoting toward a lighthouse no one realized was there. Vanessa's eyes locked on me first. Her expression flickered through 5 emotions in 2 seconds. Confusion, panic, denial, rage, and something close to betrayal. As if I was the one who'd backstabbed her. The VP didn't look at me. He just leaned forward, whispering something to legal like a man trying to jam toothpaste back into the tube with his thumbs. But the judge? The judge leaned forward. "You're the author?" I stood, smoothing the front of my blazer. "Yes, Your Honor. Please step forward." That was it. No fanfare. No gavel slam. Just forward motion. I walked past the people who deleted me, who'd smiled as they unhooked my name from the legacy I built. Past the LinkedIn architect. Past the empty suits. Past the people who still believed silence meant surrender. I didn't flinch. Because this wasn't a comeback. It was a reckoning. I stepped up to the witness stand like I'd done it before. Not because I had, God knows I hadn't, but because when you've spent months building something no one sees, you learn how to stand still while people stare. The courtroom didn't blink. Not the executives, not the attorneys, not even the damn court reporter. I sat. Adjusted the mic, folded my hands. Calm. The judge stared at me longer than necessary. Then tilted his head, squinting just a little. "Wait, you're her." Not accusatory. Not dismissive. Just surprise. Recognition. Like the plot twist at the end of a novel he thought he'd figured out 20 pages ago. Behind me, the courtroom exhaled as one. The VP shifted in his seat like someone had shoved a coat hanger down his spine. Vanessa froze completely. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. No spin. No jargon. No corporate shield. Just a dawning look that said, "We cut the wrong person." The judge turned back to the client's counsel. "You're saying the author of this paragraph is sitting in front of us now?" "Yes, Your Honor," Talia replied smoothly. "We have email records, version history metadata, and deposition transcripts confirming authorship in strategic context." Her phrasing reflects the original pitch and guided the engagement's entire tone. He nodded once slowly. "Then I'm inclined to treat this as interpretive intent. Her language stands." Boom. The words landed like a dropped gavel. Not loud. Not theatrical. Just final. In legal terms it meant everything. That my phrasing, the sentence they tried to recycle, white label, repackage, wasn't just branding fluff. It was the soul of the deal. Legally, structurally, bindingly mine. And by attributing it to me in court, the framework behind the $10 million contract snapped back into my name like a rubber band stretched too far. The judge made a note, then looked at me once more. Less curious now, more impressed. "Thank you. You may step down." I stood, turned, and walked back to my seat as calmly as I'd come. No smirk. No swagger. Just clean posture and even breath. As I passed the client table, their senior PM gave me the smallest of nods. Respect. Recognition. Maybe even regret that I hadn't been the one to sign the deal face-to-face from the start. I didn't look at Vanessa. I didn't need to. Poetic justice isn't loud. It doesn't need applause. It just needs to be seen, and this time finally I was. A week later the LinkedIn posts vanished. Vanessa's architect of the $10 million deal headline disappeared overnight. The podcast scrubbed her episode. The blog post redirect went dead. Internally, the company issued a vague statement. "Our team member will be taking personal time, pending further review. HR speak for we need her gone before legal sinks its teeth in." I didn't celebrate. Didn't screenshot anything. I just closed the browser and answered the email waiting in my inbox. Subject line: Consultant agreement final terms. The client sent it directly, not routed through their procurement team, not a favor, a contract. Consultant of record for the entire implementation phase. Strategic oversight. Direct access. And one more thing, buried in the last paragraph like a quiet thank you note in legalese. Pursuant to Clause 12C, original framework authorship qualifies recipient for a 0.5% royalty on gross execution, payable quarterly. It wasn't a gold watch or a cake with my name spelled right. It was better. It was permanent. I didn't send it to anyone. Didn't forward it to my old boss with the thought you'd like to see this. I didn't need to. The client would handle that with their first quarterly payment, and my name on the invoice. That Friday I walked past my old office building on the way to lunch. Same marble lobby. Same chipped lettering above the door. Same receptionist pretending not to see anything. I didn't stop. Didn't look up. Just kept walking, coat over my shoulder, sun on my face, phone buzzing with a new calendar invite from the client CEO. Kickoff strategy session. Led by you. And as I crossed the street, one quiet thought cut through the noise, cool and sharp as glass. They gave me credit in spirit. I just preferred ink.